I'm Fiona Aldred. I'm the Chief Executive of Mind in Aberystwyth. I've worked there for the past 9.5 years, and I've worked in the third sector for about 30 years, probably around 20 of those in management positions. Mind Aberystwyth was a new organisation when I started, so it's grown from myself and 3 staff members, and there's about 27 staff members now, and we work with around 260 people.
What was it that actually drew you to applying to come onto this particular programme in the first place?
For quite a while, because the organisation's grown significantly, we've tried to keep our sort of ICT up to date. But I started to realise that there's technology that I didn't know about. I knew what I wanted as an outcome, but I didn't actually know how I was going to get my outcome. So I had an awful lot of meetings with experts who always seemed to tell me, you can't have that, or seemed to say they know what I wanted, and then produced something that was a little bit like what I wanted. So a bit like Weetabix, when really what I wanted was cornflakes. So I when I saw this and spoke to Colin, I thought, actually, this gives me perhaps the language and a bit more understanding of what I'm asking for. So that I'm able to be specific, because if I'm not being clear that it's cornflakes I'm after, then I'm likely to get anything really, aren't I? So I realised that I had an issue that I needed to address, and I realised I didn't have the knowledge to address that. So this course came along at the right time. Okay,
and you've described a little bit there really about the effect that doing the programme has had on you, but I wonder if there's you can illustrate that a little bit further in terms of what changes you think it's made in regards to your workplace.
Oh, masses of changes. Actually, that's the least change that's happened, to be honest, because the process that I think we've gone through, learning about sort of structure and about how that structure helps you to gain a competitive advantage, and things like globalisation, which had never even come into my head, to be honest with you. And I've always been a process-based person. I enjoy process, and I've always made sure we've got good systems in place. But we'd reached a size of organisation, and I didn't understand until I came on this course, where we needed to have different structure and different processes in place, and I didn't really know what those would look like. I didn't even know they existed. So coming on this course, I've actually found what all the next steps are for an organisation that's reached the staffing size it's reached. So we've looked at using project management tools that we weren't using previously. We were using very basic project management systems, but not formal ones. We've looked at KPIs so we can measure outcomes more effectively. We've looked at core competency frameworks and what do we need to, when we're recruiting people, and understanding what roles we're looking to fulfil. So masses of benefits. The sort of the technological side of it's like it's like a small T really, and the other benefits have been really amplified.
And what about you personally? Do you feel it's changed you personally in any way?
I think it's made me more confident. I mean, I'm quite a confident person anyway. I think you don't stay in this role that I'm in as chief executive unless you're quite confident. Yeah. But it's meant that when I'm sat down talking to people and saying we need to do this, I actually understand why we're doing it. It's not just like, I think we need to do this next. This is the largest I've ever grown an organisation. Normally I've jumped ship before we've got this big, but I'm getting older and I thought I'd stay. But then I realised that came with its own challenges. So it's given me the confidence to say, no, this is why we're doing this is what we're doing, and this is the outcomes that we're looking for here. So I guess it's given more direction and more confidence.
What would you say to anyone else who was considering doing this?
Oh, do it. Your head will be scrambled when you start off, and you'll think, what on earth are they talking about? And you'll think you've definitely gone to the wrong thing. But when you start unpacking the information and doing the actual essays, the learning, that's when it really takes place. That's when you discover that sort of treasure that gives you that information that you need to take the next step. So I would definitely encourage people to come on this course and to stick with it, because I think the first lecture that we had, I thought, I'm definitely in the wrong place here. I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what I'm meant to be doing. And I kind of went home with an essay title about globalisation, and I was quite, uppity really. Well, what's it got to do with me in a rural area in Wales? Globalisation. But then I started to read about it, and I thought, well, now I understand what it's got to do with us, and I understand the importance of it. It also gave me the opportunity to spend time addressing these issues. I think when you're busy in your work situation, it's very easy to not have reading time, not have learning time, and go on the course because we have to. But I think this has actually given me a breathing space in some respects to step back and to look at things and research them and understand why we're doing them, and then be able to choose from a range of options. So I think it's, at the beginning it feels like scrambled egg, and at the end it feels more like it's a sort of boiled egg, perhaps. I wouldn't say we're completely there yet.
Do you think it made any difference to you, to the fact that actually it was an all-women group that were being taught together?
Yes, absolutely. I think in the role that I've reached, within Wales, I'm very fortunate. Most of the chief executives in Mind in Wales are women. And we've got a very close network. We work very well together. But we venture out of Wales sometimes, and we venture into the bigger world, and the network in general is 155 mind associations, and the majority of them are run by men. So we have quite a lot of contact with people at our level who are male, and often, and we've talked about it as women in Wales, in the network, often we feel slightly put down or slightly told to shut up and go away, or slightly, why would you know about that? And I think to actually risk saying in an environment, I don't really understand that, when you've reached a certain place in your career where you're supposed to understand everything, I think it's much safer in an all-female environment for a woman. So I think, yes, it's a massive difference. I'm not sure I would have recognised that at the beginning, but I think I recognise it as we've gone along, and felt sort of the value in feeling quite safe and being able to ask the daft questions and knowing confidently that we're all probably feeling very similar, and nobody's going to say, oh, come on, Fiona, you should know that by this stage, which is the kind of comments that you might get if you're in a more sort of male environment.
Okay, one last question.
Okay.
Can you think of one example of something that you really enjoyed on the programme?
Oh gosh, there's so many really.
Is there anything that stands out about the process or your participation?
You know, the support. I think the support's the one thing that really stands out. It's quite hard to go to study something when you've got a full-time job and some. But to have somebody like Maya, who we had quite a lot of contact with, who you could say, this just isn't working, or what on earth was that person on about? And he'd say, I thought the same. That support really made it okay, because I think in the early days when you went into lecture, if it was over your head, which they felt like they were, and they were very fast-paced lectures, you walked away and you thought, this, like I said earlier, this isn't, I'm sure I'm in the wrong place here. But then you'd speak to Maya or you'd email Maya, and she'd say back, I was wondering what he was going on about as well, and I'm going to have a word with them about that, because that didn't make sense to me. And you think, oh, that's so nice that it's not just me that thinks that, but there's another person out there. And even if it was just me, there's somebody who you can go to and say, I'm feeling a bit uncertain about this, and there's a reassuring word or voice, or, oh yes, it does sound like you've got a lot on. So somebody you could tell it to. I think that would be the most important factor for me.